The KTBS 3 Freedom Fest finale continues.
At one point, Barksdale was the largest airfield with more than 22,000 acres for training. Today, it is home to the 8th Air Force, the 2nd Bomb Wing, and Global Strike Command. All of that rich history on display here at the Global Power Museum. Some of my favorites out here at the Global Power Museum, the B-17, one of the premier bombers of World War II, taking part in thousands of missions over Europe. And then, of course, here, the P-51 Mustang, probably the premier fighter of World War II, taking part in such famous battles as the invasion of Normandy. When America was attacked on September 11, 2001, President George W. Bush needed to be protected, so he came here to Barksdale Air Force Base. A shocked and grieving nation needed to be addressed, and the president did that from this very podium with that flag behind him. It was a retired Chief Master Sergeant that set the stage. Here's Jerry May.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
As the hijack attacks played out on live television before a stunned nation, Bill McIntosh was already on base.
We didn't even know at that point that we would be hosting the president on Barksdale at that time. That happened very quickly.
Bill's job as chief of protocol for the 8th Air Force was to prepare venues for distinguished visitors. And one was on the way on that day of crisis.
President Bush stood behind it. This is where he gave his first speech.
That podium that Jan Micheletti, curator of Barksdale's Global Power Museum, is talking about is the focal point of their 9/11 display, along with video of Bush's speech. Bill quickly got that podium in place, along with everything else that would be needed for a presidential address.
His aide said we need to have some American flags that we could have behind him as a backdrop.
President Bush had been informed of the attacks while visiting a school in Sarasota, Florida.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America.
He made brief remarks to a surprised crowd there before being whisked away aboard Air Force One with a fighter jet escort. But where? Was he also a terrorist target? After his plane soared over the Gulf of Mexico, it was decided that Barksdale Air Force Base would be a secure place to land. And that's where our president would reappear and address the nation about the horrific attacks.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward.
The attacks on our nation's financial center, our defense headquarters, and another one likely aiming for our capital.
We will show the world that we will pass this test. God bless.
After the address, Bill saw the president and key staffers coming down a hall as they prepared to leave the base.
I'd step back in the room just to get out of the way.
That's when something else quite remarkable happened.
As he got even with the doorway, he stopped, turned, faced me, and as I remembered, looked me very, and this I'll always remember this, looked me very directly in the eye, shook my hand and said, "Thank you for help taking care of me today." It did impress me with the fact that even though he had a lot on his mind, I know, had things to do, but took the time to stop and do that. But it was just satisfying that we were able to do our part in what would need to be done on that particular day.
And that story is just one of hundreds produced by my colleague and former KTBS anchor, Jerry May, during his career with us. And Jerry, I know you were an anchor here for 22 years, but you produced Hometown Patriot for 12 years. It must have been gratifying just to meet with these incredible men and women over the years.
Yeah, it was so great to be able to give them some due recognition, a couple or 3 minutes or maybe more on TV, to honor them for their service and their sacrifice, because they deserve it so much. We owe them so much, all the great men and women who serve and continue to serve our country. And I was just struck by, with some of the stories, that the fact that we live among heroes live among us. Mm-hmm. There are heroes among us, people who bravely served in combat. Just so many amazing stories of what people did when they were young, serving our country. There were things that I couldn't have done when I was that age, certainly. And so it helped me gain a better appreciation for our military, for our veterans, and I hope it did the same perhaps for lots of other viewers who tuned in to watch Hometown Patriot. And hopefully more people realized how great our military is and our veterans who defended our freedom.
One of the most extraordinary things I thought was when you were recognized on the floor of the United States House for your contributions through Hometown Patriot.
Very nice. Congressman Mike Johnson did that. That made it the long hours worthwhile. And you're getting to understand, I know, because you continue Hometown Patriot, and thank you for doing that. But there's some extra work involved, and that that appreciation that I received made it worthwhile.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And I'm thrilled to be taking over. I'm honored to be able to tell the stories of our veterans and those who've served our country. As you well know, I have 3 sons. They all serve in the U.S. military. My oldest, Army, middle Air Force. He just got back from a Middle East deployment, and my youngest is in the Navy. My dad's a Navy veteran, and I have written a book about Army Rangers. So it's a thrill for me to be able to hear these stories. And one thing that strikes me is they tell incredible stories, but they're so humble, incredibly humble about their service, and they all say, "I do it again. I do it again."
They do. Yeah. They do, and so many of them were just they were following orders, and they did what their country asked them to do to go fight our wars. A lot of them, of course, a lot of people volunteered. A lot of people, Vietnam era and on up to World War II that we've talked to, they were drafted in. But they did it. They served us. They served our country, and they did it for themselves and their families, and they did it for all of us too. Even though they don't know us.
No.
But they fought and defended freedom.
And I'm constantly reminded, freedom isn't free. There's a high price for freedom that we enjoy in this country.
Yeah. Thanks again for continuing the series, and thanks to your family for all their service.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow, outstanding.
Yeah. It's an honor, and I'm very proud of my boys.
Yeah.
And we remind you too that Hometown Patriot airs Sunday night at both 9 and 10 on KPXJ and then KTBS.
Each year we come together to celebrate the freedom and faith that are the very foundation of America's greatness.
For one local pastor, the two go hand in hand. He's keeping his pledge to serve his country and his congregation.
God and country. God is my commander. The country is the country I live in that He created. Biblically, He gave me authority to fight for my country and defend my country. So it's God and country.
E.J. Adams joined the Air Force in 1948. By 1950, he found himself at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan, guarding B-29s and B-50s during the beginning of the Korean War. He sometimes operated as a sniper on base, watching over American military assets for any saboteurs who would sometimes attempt to take out U.S. targets there.
And when I saw the enemy, it was an automatic. I stopped them. I either shot them or whatever I had to do and capture them.
Adams says as a man of God, he didn't like the idea of having to kill someone.
Because I was a country boy, born and raised on a farm, went to church, but I knew I was defending my country. I knew I had to do it. My country was more important than anything. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to have to shoot. But I knew that if I didn't, they'd kill me.
Adams returned to the States in 1951 and was assigned to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. He also served in the Philippines, the enlisted man over all security forces there. Adams' journey finally took him to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, where from 1965 to 1970 he trained airmen, many of whom would head off to Vietnam. He returns frequently to Lackland, always in uniform, to give speeches and to meet with those training future airmen of our country. He says even at 91, he is still fit and ready to serve.
I'd fight for America today in a New York second. The military made me what I am, and I still am what I am.
When you sit for a few minutes and talk with E.J. Adams, it becomes very clear that he is a very patriotic man.
Patriotism is nothing more than love for my country, willing to lay my life down for the freedom of people. Freedom is not free. Freedom costs.
As a pastor and military man, Adams says he saw the pain that men and women endured when they returned from war. He calls it shell shock. Today we hear the term PTSD.
I'm a counselor and I counsel with them. I rejoice with them and I weep with them.
Adams says whether it's Lackland Air Force Base, the Shreveport VA, or meeting with veterans in Panola County, Texas, he will serve them for the rest of his days.
And I make sure that our veterans are properly recognized at funerals and things of that nature. Anything that I can do today for a veteran, I'm going to do it.
More of the KTBS 3 Freedom Fest finale after the break.